In today's video, we're going to be doing a Q1 reading recap. Let's get right into it. Okay, so I am historically known for being the worst reader, the worst book lover. I love books and I love reading, but I'm just really bad at being in the habit of reading. I think it's partially because I'm a huge mood reader, partially because I get into reading slumps very, very often, and partially because I read extremely slow. So a culmination of those things just make it really hard for me to stay consistent with my reading habits. But I will say, I have done such an incredible job in 2024 when it comes to my reading habits. I completed 5 books, y'all, in 2024. That is more than I have done in several years. I usually have a reading goal of trying to read 1 book per month, so 12 books in a year, and we're at the 3rd month, at least when I'm recording this, and I have finished 5 books. So that is a major success for me, and I do owe it to a couple of things. The first thing is my slow morning routine. My morning routine includes 10 minutes of reading time, and while that may seem like very little to some people, I think, in my opinion, 10 minutes is better than 0 minutes of reading, and it has really, really helped me get into the habit of reading. So sometimes after work, I will pick up my book and get into reading and read more than 10 minutes in the day, but reading 10 minutes in the morning has definitely helped me kind of be consistent with that reading practice, if that makes sense. Another thing that I have to give credit to is reading in different formats. I've talked about this in a hobby favorites video not too long ago, but ebooks, audiobooks, those have been extremely helpful in helping me continuously read and be in that reading habit, that reading practice throughout the months. So owe it to those 2 things. I highly, highly recommend you try out either one of those things if you have trouble reading or staying in that reading practice like I do. I just wanted to say that I will not be doing ratings like blank out of 5 stars, if that makes sense, because I know that's super subjective. So I'll just be sharing my takes and whether or not I liked the book, and depending on your interests, whether or not you will like the book, if that makes sense. So let's jump right into it. The first book that I read for the year is Glossy by Marisa Meltzer. I listened to this one on audiobook. And by the way, if you are into audiobooks or you want to get into audiobooks, Spotify Premium has books included if you have Spotify Premium. You just have to make note that there are a certain amount of hours you can listen to in your billing cycle. So just be mindful of that if you're listening to a longer book. You may have to pay more to listen to it for the remaining of the billing cycle, or you'll just have to wait to the end of the billing cycle so that everything resets. But yes, listen to Glossy on audiobook, and it's essentially a narrative of Emily Weiss, who is the founder of Glossier. I am a huge fan of Glossier. I love the brand. I love the marketing more than anything else, and if you're a marketer, you're going to love this book. But I also love the products as well, so I just wanted to learn more about Glossier and Emily Weiss. I feel like there was a lot of speculation about her and who the type of person that she is for a long time. So I've been meaning to read this book for a while. I just didn't pick it up, but I picked it up this year because my coworker picked it up at the same time. And I did enjoy this. I think it was a quick read. It was really easy to listen to. So if you want to listen to something that is quick and easy, this is definitely one of those. But I feel like the author or the tone in this book really painted Emily Weiss in a negative sense. And I don't think that her actions really replicate to the tone that was portrayed in this book. I feel like she has definitely done some problematic things. She was really portrayed in a super negative sense when, while she was problematic and she wasn't perfect, she really wasn't all that problematic. She wasn't super problematic. And honestly, after listening to this, I definitely look at Emily Weiss in a different perspective, but in a much more positive perspective, because like I said, there has been speculation about her for a long time, and it made it seem like she was probably a horrible person, but I actually don't think that she's a horrible person. I just think that she's a private person. So yeah, I think if you're into marketing, if you're into Glossier, if you want to know more about Emily Weiss and her story, I think you may like this one. But let me know if you have read it or listened to it, if you feel the same way about how I feel in the way that she was portrayed. If you think that it was accurate or not, I don't know, you let me know. But the next book that I read is I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jennette McCurdy. This one was also on audiobook, and if you want to read this one, I highly, highly recommend you listen to it on audiobook because Jennette narrates it and she does an incredible job. It's so powerful, it's so emotional, and her narrating it makes it even more impactful in that way. So highly recommend it on audiobook if you get a chance. It's also a super quick read. The chapters are extremely short and she reads through it quite well, so I feel like you'll get through it in a couple of days. It's essentially a memoir about Jennette McCurdy's life, specifically on her tumultuous relationship with her toxic mother and kind of growing up as a child actress and how that can be problematic as well. I think this story is extremely relevant right now, so definitely recommend you pick it up now if you haven't. But I loved this book so much. It was heavy, it was emotional, and there are a lot of trigger warnings in there, by the way, but I really enjoyed it because I feel like it was really well written, it was really well narrated, and it was a very insightful story. I think it was actually a relatable story in some senses, and I don't know, I just feel like it was a book that I have been wanting to read for such a long time, and when I finally read it, and after hearing all of the hype around it, I feel like it was 100% worth it in this situation. So if you're interested in hearing about Jennette McCurdy, about child stardom, about, you know, tumultuous relationships with parents and stuff like that, I think you will 100% love this one, but just know that it is quite heavy. And so that's why the next book that I ended up reading, which was on audiobook, is Slade House by David Mitchell. I wanted to read something much lighter, a little bit spooky, and much shorter after Jennette McCurdy's memoir because it was really heavy. I just wanted to do a complete 180 when it came to genre. So I read Slade House, and Slade House is a genre-bending story of a haunted house where people who enter go missing on the exact date every decade. I think this book is about 250 pages or less, very short, and I got through it so fast. I'm like shocked at how fast I read it. I think it took me 2 days at most. And I don't know if that's because I read it on ebook, and people have said that when they read on their ebook, they read 10 times faster. So I don't know if that was a factor, but it was a fast-paced read. It was super interesting. I really enjoyed it. This was actually a recommendation from a close friend of mine, and she said it was exactly what I wanted. It was a thriller, it was spooky, it was short, it was fast-paced, and that's 100% how I would depict this story. It's also genre bending because while it is a thriller and it is spooky, it's not 100% horror. Why do I keep saying 100%? Anyway, it's not fully horror. I think it also has elements of sci-fi, fantasy, time travel. I don't know which genre that falls into. Maybe a mixture of sci-fi and fantasy, but a lot of different genres, but also spooky, eerie. It does give haunted house vibes, but in a very unique way. And I think this story is a prequel to a larger series that is much thicker than this very short read. So whether you choose to read the series afterwards or not, that's up to you. I will not be doing that because I'm not a fan of large books, but I really did enjoy this one, and I did get exactly what I wanted out of this book. A nice, quick, spooky read that wasn't too hard to follow. Oh my gosh, Logan almost tripped on himself there. Anyway, I think you gotta go. The next book that I read is Midnight on Beacon Street by Emily Ruth Verona. I actually have a physical copy of this one. As you can see, it's very small. Big appeal to me. I was actually at the bookstore and I was looking for something completely different when I spotted this, and when I read the back of it, I was like, well, I've got to get this book. I have to drop everything that I'm doing and read this one because, hear this, tell me this isn't the most perfect book for me. It's a 90s slasher type of horror story set in suburban New Jersey. And did I say that it was in the 90s? It's set in the 90s as well. And it's less than 200 pages, or it's exactly 200 pages. I couldn't say no to getting this. I had to. And I finished this. It took me a little bit longer, I will admit, but I did really enjoy this one. It gives off all the vibes that I just talked about. In the 90s, slasher vibes. It really reminds me of When a Stranger Calls, if you've ever seen that movie or the movies. It's very much that, but it is intertwined with a really nervous, anxious girl. Like, she's the main character, and she's a really nervous person, and it goes and it explores that a lot in here. But it was a lot of fun. It was definitely a quick read, even though it took me longer than I thought it was going to take. It starts off slow, and I think that's why it took me a little bit longer. You have to kind of get into the vibe because you're really reading about an anxious person, and sometimes that can be tricky to really fully invest into, if that makes sense. But the horror is there. It's not too horror forward. There is slasher vibes, but it's not too heavy on the blood and bloodshed and horror and slashing and stuff like that, but it's definitely there. If you're into any of those things, you will definitely like this one, and it's a quick read, so I wouldn't say not to try it. I think it's worth it. Okay, and then the last book that I read for this quarter, this is the best book. This is the best book on the list for me, and it might be the best book that I've read in a very, very long time. Now, I will just say, I'm not a big nonfiction person, but I have read, this is the third book in the quarter that I've read that's nonfiction, and I never knew that I was a nonfiction girly, but here I am, and here I am saying that it is my favorite read of 2024. It might be, I don't know if anything's gonna top this one. It is The Art Thief. First of all, look at this cover. Obsessed with covers like this. I love covers that have artwork on them. I know that's a big trend that's up and happening right now in the publishing world. I'm all for it. I am 100%, I said 100% again, I'm all for it. What is it about? It's about an art thief. And like I said, this is nonfiction, but it's the life and story of an art thieving couple who stole over 250 works in the 90s. Nonfiction. This reads like fiction. This reads like a thriller. This reads like a movie. It's so well written. I think I need to read everything written by Michael Finkel because he writes so well. He was able to create such an incredible story and narrative around a real life story that is so messy and so dramatic and so scandalous. Not only was it about the crimes, but it's about the psyche, it's about the childhood, it's about everything that kind of gives contextual insight into the thieves behind this story. And like I said, they stole over 250 works, so many pieces, and the story just continues to unravel here. And once you get to the end, I was literally shocked. I had to stop and take a moment for what happened at the end. And I still cannot believe that this is nonfiction because it was such an incredibly written story about a real life story. And I can't believe this would happen in real life. And I can't believe that things like this still happen in real life to this day with art and stealing art and the whole world that's associated with that. I don't know if it was obvious, but I picked this one up because I had just went on my creative retreat and I was just fully immersed in the art world, and I went to the Barnes Foundation and I was like, you know what? It'd be kind of cool to read this one because I was hearing about this one for a bit. I went into bookstores and I saw it everywhere. I was like, you know what? I think it's time to read this one. And as you can see, it is short. It is about 200 pages. So once again, a quick read. I read this in less than a week. Very, very quick read. And you will speed through it because it is such a thrilling, well-written book. I hope it didn't sound like mush with me explaining this because I finished this book last night and I can't stop thinking about it, and all I want to do is just ramble on about what is inside of this book, but I don't want to spoil it. But that is all that I have for this video. Once again, I'm so proud of myself for getting through 5 books in 3 months. I'm just beside myself, so happy about it. But let me know if you have been reading anything this year and what have been your favorite books for the year thus far. I would love to know what your book recommendations are, if anything is aligning with your interests. But thank you so much for checking out this video. I hope you are having a good reading year so far. Also, let me know if you have a reading goal and what it is, because I would love to know that as well. And I will talk to you in next week's video.